Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast, where the blueprint to understanding a new and unified world is in our shifting consciousness.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining the Blueprint Podcast this morning. I'm Angela Blaha and this is Jason Hermanson. So we are here super excited about self-actualization. We did discuss it a little bit last week, and we really want to dive deeper into it. And then how does that work into, what does it mean to move from a doing person into a being person, which we talk about a lot. So let's get started. Self-actualization, what is it really? Well, if we're actually looking at a dictionary kind of definition, it means to the ability to realize or a fulfillment in one's talents and potentials. Fulfillment in one's talents and potentials. Self-actualization. Huge ability when we can actually understand our own talents and potentials, especially when it's considered to drive or to, moving forward in your life. Like that is where thriving actually can take place. Because without self-actualizing, now so I think that people get afraid here because it moves into when does the ego take over and you become very egoic versus, understanding and using your talents, your gifts, your the deepest parts of knowing who you are, the potentials of who you are, the possibilities. I think that there's a fine line there that people don't like to cross because, we all know people who are very egoic in their life, but you know what? I think that the ego takes over very young in our lives and it sort of perpetuates throughout our life. And if you're going to be unconscious about that, you're going to be unconscious about it. I don't think that the ego, once it says, oh, you're really good at this, all of a sudden takes over and then, creates weird stuff in your life. Maybe I'm missing the beat there, but I think that that's how the ego works. Like the ego is the other portion of that is when people don't have an ego, like if you're a narcissistic kind of person, you're into dominating and controlling other people. There's no ego there at all. And so, we have to have some of the ego to balance ourselves or to understand our talents and potentials and our gifts and abilities at the same time, not allowing it to dominate. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes, this will be the part of the podcast where if I'm listening, I'm going to stop, pause it, rewind it, and have to listen to that again because you had so much great stuff in there to digest. It's everything you said makes sense. It's important. The other part of the fearful component, and we'll jump into this more here towards the end, I'm sure, but it's some people. I mean, you have this level of fear stepping into that oneness because then it's gonna create a level of accountability. And some people don't always like that as well. So you have the ego portion because, we can talk about that for hours actually. But then it's also that piece of, oh shit, now I have to own my crap, right? I'm going to have to be accountable for all this shit that's going to be coming up. And, it's like, I don't want to deal with that shit. I just want to keep pushing it down. So we have to kind of get over that as well. There's a lot of hurdles that us humans have created for ourselves that we'd have to overcome in order to find that fulfillment, that abundance. It's all out there. It's all out there for us to grab and to take hold of.
I think that's a great point and I think that probably we can blame it on the ego, but really, when we have to be accountable and responsible for all of our talents and gifts and our shadow side, like that's the portion that really brings up fear. And if we look at our world right now, we're living the shadow. Like it is, but at the same time, living just purely in that shadow is not healthy either. Like where we are right now, we are a very unhealthy world, because there's no balance. There's no, like, we're just projecting out our shadow. And it would be like projecting out all of your talents and your gifts and your abilities. I mean, it's the same concept. It's just on the other side of the spectrum. And that also brings up fear. So we have a lot of fears because we have these crazy belief systems, that limit us so much. And when we're talking about self-actualization, like, you have to go beyond the belief systems. You have to destroy them in order to actually admit that we have a shadow side, that we have these feelings and emotions and thoughts and that are dark. And we also have these feelings and emotions and thoughts that are pure light. And so, we have to, where do we rein it in order to find a harmonization with all that is? Like, really, that's kind of where we're headed, I feel, in the new world.
Yeah, we've everything you just mentioned, we've created for ourselves as human beings here on this rock over eons, right? We've created this. We've been led to believe that these certain things need to happen. That ego is there to have you thrive and survive, long time ago. And all these belief patterns we have created for ourselves. So that also means we can remove them and destroy them ourselves as well. Back up a minute to kind of provide the audience a tool that they can take with them to kind of start recognizing and maybe addressing some of these fears that I'm sure we'll be jumping into here in a little while. But so I teach yoga throughout the week, and last weekend I was trying to think about, we got a new month. I wanted to bring a new intention to my yoga teaching for the classes that I teach. And I settled on the monkey mind, the yoga monkey mind, right? When your mind starts to wander and when you're on your mat, you're not supposed to be like that, all these rules. But what I want the class to focus on, and I think it fits right here with what you just mentioned, is we are always fearful of what we don't know, right? That if we don't know about something or we're not 100% about something, we always get fearful about that. So how do we take that power away from that topic or that idea or that concept or that fear? How do you take that power away? Two things. You acknowledge the fact that it exists, right? And then you give it a level of acceptance. And what I mean by that is all of our fears, we provide a level of acceptance. You might not accept 100% of it right away, but you're going to build up to that. And by just acknowledging the fact that it exists and it's there, and then providing that level of acceptance or love to it, it has no more power over you, and it will remove that fear, right? So, right, we all got skeletons in our closet. We all got things that have happened or that we're not necessarily proud of about ourselves or about our environment. So provided a level of acceptance. It might not be 100% of it right away, and that's okay. Just keep building up to that 100%, and then acknowledge the fact that it exists, and then it will no longer hold power over you, and you can move past that. You can start healing that and letting go of that. Does that make sense?
100%, and that's exactly how the process to self-actualization, I want to say, begins, right? Like, once you move into acceptance, right, no matter what it is, whether it's a strength that you have that you don't really want to admit, or if it's a fear that you have and you don't really want to admit, that level of acceptance, it does build in, unless you're a real weirdo like me and are super curious and it's like, wait, what? Tell me more.
You just gotta keep picking that scab. Keep picking scab.
Sure. Yes. So yeah, acceptance, that's a great tool. Like, you're acknowledging something different. I think that's the most fearful thing of admitting that we have a shadow side or these darker components to us, or that we feel something that's not supposed to be. Anger, for example, like, every single one of us has anger. I don't care if you're the Dalai Lama, you still have bits of anger in you because it's in our cells, it's in our DNA. I mean, we do live in a world of extreme opposites, right? Duality. And so, of course, we would have every tiny bit of the duality within us because we're made from all that is, right? And so to deny that, I think, is egoic.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where the ego can take over and say, oh, no, I don't have any of that, right? And then that perpetuates, like that's a perpetuating kind of component where it's just complete denial of the actuality of who we are. Like we all have these aspects of us.
Yep. And I think sometimes what prevents us from finding that acceptance is we have this belief pattern that we have to accept 100% of it right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to come to grips with it. We have to accept 100% of it. And then it's going to be painful and miserable. And I don't want to deal with that shit, right? That's what prevents us from moving into that, recognizing it, accepting it, and then moving past it. And you don't have to accept 100% of it right away, right? Just acknowledge the fact that, oh yeah, I have that. And that can be enough that day. And then the next time it comes around, accept a little bit more of it, right? Well, what about anger? That what the topic of anger? Yeah, I have anger, right? Okay, I've acknowledged it and I've accepted it to a degree. Now, maybe 3 days from now, something else comes up, and you find yourself in a situation where this anger starts bubbling up. It triggers something. Oh yeah, I recognize that I have this anger. Well, what about that situation triggered that, right? Well, there's another level of acceptance. Now step into that a little bit more and just keep building upon that. And then eventually you will recognize all of it. You don't have to get all of it 100% right away. I guess that's the point.
Yeah. And once you recognize something and acknowledge it and accept it, you begin to process it through your physical body. I think that's one thing that's never really taught in our processing, is that it has to go through the body. Like you have to be able to feel it in the physical form, because we are a physical form. And for some people, it's real easy to process through the body. For others, it's not very easy to process through the body because we don't like physical pain. None of us really like to have physical pain, and there will be physical pain with it. But I can tell you that when it gets stuck in the body, illness presents itself. Some way, somehow, there's an illness component that generally coincides with it. And so, the more that you can process those triggers and understand them at a deeper level, like, why is it that I have this trigger? Is it me? Is it, wounds that I have in my childhood or my adulthood? Or is it forgiveness component? Like, do I need to forgive myself for something? Or is it ancestral and we have no knowledge of it whatsoever, right? Because we do carry ancestral genes in us, because we have those belief systems that support that. And so you have to start looking at, if we're really moving into self-actualization, what is it that we have to start doing in order to move into that? And so I think that this is the process. Well, it's the only process I know that actually works, where we aren't using denial or some of the other fear tactics from before. And we can actually move forward into, this understanding your talents and your gifts at such a deep level where you can actually use them in a physical world. I think that that's a huge component to self-actualization, is using your talents like in a physical form. Because, we could talk about magic all day long, but until you actually get to that level of self-mastery where you have acknowledged and accepted all of your lights and darks, and everything in between that, the potentials for using, extraordinary gifts, let's call it, are pretty much like they don't even, it doesn't exist.
Let's jump into that a little bit, about using your talents, right? What does that mean? What does that look like? It doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're an energy worker, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to provide your talents to a clientele. That's not what we're talking about here. Finding your talents, using the talents that you brought here this lifetime for yourself, for your higher good, and for those around you, right? But it needs to start with yourself first, and then you can build up and take them other places as well, right? I mean, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit about what you mean by using your talents?
Yeah. So they are your strengths, right? Like, I think, I don't know if it's so much now. Well, with my clients, it's not so much now, but maybe it's because I've had my clients for, I mean, when I get clients, they stick around. When we have so much fear about our talent, about our strengths, the natural gifts that we brought into this world, we have a lot of fear because we're like, oh, I used that. I know there's someplace in me that says I used that and I used it to manipulate or control or dominate someone or something before. Like, we have that knowledge. We may not know where it comes from at all, but there's something deep inside of us that says, oh my gosh, I used that, to harm someone. Maybe it was myself. Maybe I used it to harm myself. But you have that. And there's a fear that says, well, I can't use that this lifetime because I don't know how to use it correctly. And so we have that. So we have that, right? That stands in front of us or blocks us, or we have society that says, oh, that's worshiping of some other kind, or that's using a talent that nobody should ever have. Like, you're into the electronic world, or what do you call the electric world, electricity world. The thing that I would be 100% afraid of, because I have no idea, I don't understand how it even works, but Jason's a master at it. So his ability to use, let's say, electricity as a component for growth or expansion, or to use it in a way that would be free for the entire world, or to tap into that kind of, like a Tesla, like a Nikola Tesla kind of energy, who says, oh, let's just bring in this energy. It'll be free for the world. And we won't ever have to worry about, that kind of a component ever again. So Jason has that ability, but he also uses it in a way that society says we can use it, right? But does he have the ability to tap into it outside of that and say, oh, let's just create this and we won't have to use domination and control. We can just give it for free to everyone. So at what point, Jason, would it be okay for you to use that natural gift to spread it to the world, right?
Yep.
I mean, and like, we all have these kinds of things, right? Where we do things like my intuition, I do it as a business, but there was a time where I was so afraid of it, was like, I would know too much. Like, that was my thought. It was like, I would know too much and people would just like cast me out, even though I'm an outlier anyway. I would be, but I never really realized that until I actually worked with my dark, shadowy kind of energies, right? And then I had to admit that, oh, okay, well, if I know too much, then who cares? Who cares if I know too much?
I think that last part where you just mentioned, it's that fear factor of, well, what am I going to think of myself if I step into this? And what is everyone else going to think of me? I'm just going to be this weirdo, right? I'm just going to be this weird person that talks about this weird stuff. But something that, I mean, we've all recognized over the last 10 to 15 years as more and more people are opening up to these ideas that there's something bigger at play here, right? There's a lot more to life. There's a lot more to our planet and the universe. And there's a lot more components that were shut down and put to the side because it was woo-woo. It was weird. No one wanted to talk about it because you can't necessarily have it in physical form, but we're kind of moving away from that. So that's where just keep an open mind, know that there are a lot of things at play, especially right now, today. And there's a lot of shifting going on. There's a lot of things happening in all of us and on earth that is going to open up a lot of this abundance, this fulfillment that Angela mentioned at the beginning. And we need to keep an open mind to that. And we need to start stepping into that. Each and every one of us need to start stepping towards those ideas, those thoughts that we're having, those things that we're reading, or things that show up on our social media pages or we see in the paper, and just keep an open mind, because there's a lot of really cool shit happening right now, and we all just need to recognize that as a whole.
Yeah, I think self-actualization is actually becoming, I don't know if it's trendy yet, but I feel like it should be trendy pretty within the next year or so. And then, so that people start really bringing out their natural abilities, because that's really where power lies. When you can bring in your personal power into your own natural talents, gifts, abilities, like nothing can stop you, right? And I'm not talking about someone who has a real demented mind, who is all about killing or, ravaging others. I mean, they're already doing that, because we live in a society that actually has support for that. When you move into self-actualization, there's a shift that happens in the consciousness, and self-actualization becomes very large energetically, and moving into those natural powers, those natural personal powers, doesn't really allow for that shadow side to really be dominant. Like if I'm looking into the future, there's a real shift of energy that happens with that when you're moving into personal natural gifts and abilities, right? Right now we're living in a world, and we have been living in a world that is based on belief systems. In a natural talent, self-actualized world, there are no belief systems.
It can't be controlled.
Exactly. And I think that we need to get rid of that fear that says, wait, when I'm in my natural talent, no one can control me. That's correct. That is 100% correct. It's when you're not in your natural talent that you can be controlled and dominated.
Yep, absolutely. And then when you start stepping into all of this, you start activating yourself. You start activating all of these abilities, powers, DNA that's within us, that's just going to help you create and fulfill more and more and more. So it gets amplified, right? And everything starts happening faster. You start addressing those shadows quicker and faster, and coming to grips with them and moving past them. You start activating more and more stagnant DNA that is inside our physical body, and in our blueprint, you're starting to activate more and more of our blueprint, right?
Yes.
And it's actually a really super amazing place to be. So
yeah, agree. And that's what's creating the new world. Like we can talk about activations and doing all this, recreation of the amygdala and all that those are just techniques and tools that are going to support the self-actualized human being, the one that uses their natural abilities. It's not that is leading the way. That is, we are doing those energetically to support the new human being, the 13th dimensional kind of human being, who is very much self-actualized, self-mastery, like knows and understands themselves and their power. And when you know and understand that, I feel that humanity is ready to actually move into that. I'm not sure we were in the past, But I think that we're ready to move into that so that we can actually build the world that we originally started to build, like the one that doesn't have these domination and control factors. But I think that we needed to go there in order to understand that we do have this natural power, that we do, like, we are very powerful, but we've never really understood that.
Absolutely. Or at least not for, several lifetimes now. We haven't allowed ourselves to continue that knowing, that oh, go ahead.
We were in survival mode.
Yeah. Yep. And because we found ourselves in that state, people found a way to harness that and control that, and it's prevented us from evolving as a species here on Earth, right? And that's what we've been doing for a little while now, starting to put the building blocks in place to allow us to evolve as a human being, to elevate and activate that blueprint, and then really start stepping into this new, right, this 13th creation. The universe is supporting that. The cosmos are supporting that. The earth is supporting that. And there's a lot of work being, pardon me?
Humans are supporting
Yeah,
that.
that's what I was just going to say next, where there's a lot of work being done here on Earth by human beings that is supporting all of this creation. And that's exactly what we're talking about. But it starts with you. It starts with you. It starts with that fulfillment. And the key message here today is you have to do something. You can't just stand by and not do anything at all. You actually have to start with yourself. Start taking ownership and leadership in yourself, and everything else will fall into place.
Yes, the 7 powers of the soul. That is actually the ticket to moving into the blueprint of self-actualization. So, yeah. Let's move into then the being portion, right? Because we talk about being, like, we're moving from a doing kind of human into a being human. And what does that really mean? I think that this is the mirror of self-actualization. And last week we talked about Maslow's hierarchy, where we moved from basic survival needs into self-actualization. And the doing person is the survival person. It's the one who just, does work, physical labor kind of work to survive. And we played into that money hierarchy, patriarchy kind of mentality where, you had to have money to survive. We still have to have money to survive. I don't think that's going to go away for a really long time. But moving from the doing, who is just basic survival, into being, and the being is the self-actualization, self-mastery kind of component, where it doesn't mean that we don't do anything. We don't work. We don't, have relationships. We just lay around on the couch and flip the channel all day. That's not what that means. It means that you're actually being your natural self, your natural gifts and your abilities, and you're using that as a field of work. You're using that as, basis for relationships, like all the areas of your life that you really want to have, like, amazing things happening. Like, that's where you become the being. Like, that's where you use your natural gifts, talents, abilities, and you become that. Like, that's the whole being portion, is you're becoming your natural self. You're not, playing into society rules any longer, or family belief systems any longer, or, whatever the past was. That's the doing. And we're moving into becoming who we are, our natural self. So I think that it's a hard concept for
our energetic self, right? Well, it's hard because you can't always, it's not necessarily tangible all the time.
Yeah, you can't measure it.
You can't. No, you can't. And it's at times it's not something that our senses that we've been knowing about to date don't always recognize either. But it is finding what makes you awesome and empowering that awesomeness to create the life that you want to create that comes from your heart, right? It's not going to come from up here. It's not necessarily going to come from your gut or your intuition. It's going to come from your heart and place lead and come from your place of your emotions, your heart. If you, another tool to kind of take with you today is, it's like, how do I find this? How do I know that this is a power of mine? This is one of my abilities that's going to make me awesome. Check in with your heart. Ask your heart. Your heart will tell you if it is one of those things you should be focusing on, or cultivating and providing energy to help it flourish, to help that find that fulfillment. Use your heart to kind of help be that guide, to be that compass in directing you on this path of fulfillment and abundance. If you listen to your heart and it'll help you out, right? There'll be some areas where some lessons that will have to show up, right? It's just growing pains, or you're the universe will give you opportunities to recognize certain things, to find grace in certain things, and then that'll fall away, and then more abundance will be on the other side of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Let's dive deeper into listening to the heart. Like people talk about that a lot. What does that really mean for you? Like, I still don't have that whole concept, because my intuition is like the thing for me. Like I see. So a couple of years ago, before we went to Ireland, there was a transition that happened within my field, and the chakras all came together, and it just created one giant chakra, and it was centered right around the heart space area. And I still see that in myself. And so I don't feel like there's a separation with the chakras or with the minds, like the heart mind or the logical mind or the intuitive mind. Like, I don't feel like, for me, I just don't feel like that even exists any longer, that it's just one giant energy ball. And so what is it how can people like literally start to listen to their heart versus the mind or their intuition? Because that's, we've been programmed to believe that it's in your mind or it's in your intuition. I mean, those have been the separation games that have been played for a really long time, right? So how do we move into this heart space, and how do you recognize that it's actually your heart versus something else?
All right. You ready?
Totally.
Sorry. All right, close your eyes. All right, so first of all, anybody that's listening, just find a comfortable seat. Let's just pause here for a second, find a very comfortable seat. And if you're at a place, hopefully you're not driving, but if you're at a place, close your eyes or have a soft gaze down towards the ground. And just recognize your breath. Recognize your inhales and your exhales. With each inhale, your belly rises up and out, your heart rises up and out. And then with each exhale, your heart and your belly soften and return back to center. Just breathe. Now, take your right hand and place it on top of your belly button. Take your left hand and place it on top of your heart. And feel your hands rise and fall with each inhale and exhale. And breathe. If your mind starts to wander, just return your focus back to your breath. Now, in your mind's eye, I want you to picture 2 pieces of string attached to your left palm. I want you to take one of those strings and attach it to the palm of your right hand, connecting your intuition, your gut brain, to your heart, your emotional brain. And feel that. Let your hands rise and fall with each inhale and exhale. With each inhale, we find expansion. Everything reaches up and out. And with each exhale, we soften and everything returns back to center. Now with that other string, take that string, that other string from your left palm and attach it to your forehead. Connecting your logical brain, your brain, to your emotional brain. Keep breathing. Keep recognizing that expansion with each inhale and that return to center with each exhale. Now visualize both strings and all 3 points. You're connecting your logical brain to your heart brain and your heart brain to your intuition brain. And you're bringing all 3 of those into alignment with each exhale and each inhale. Now start bringing your awareness back to your space, back to your breath. You can release your hands to your side. You can blink your eyes open, wiggle your nose, bring a smile to your face. All right, so that's a technique that I've been playing with for the last several months on bringing this oneness to all 3 of those very important parts of our body, right? Our intuition, our gut brain, our emotional brain, our heart space, and our logical brain, our brain. Bringing all of those into oneness will help you get to the place that we keep talking about. Exactly what happened to Angela in Ireland, bringing all of that energy and all of that space into your heart center, right? All 3 of those are extremely important. We have to function with all 3 of those. You have to function with your emotions, your intuition, and your logical brain. We have to survive. That's how we do that. But we need to find oneness in all of those to find this fulfillment, right? To find abundance, to start finding the oneness in ourselves, to help find that awesomeness. We bring all 3 of those into one. Does that make sense? Does that kind of help answer that question?
It's a great exercise. I love the string component because it pulls, like, even if something is off center, that string is going to pull it into center. And when Jason talks about the oneness, if oneness doesn't resonate with you, use the word harmonize, because that's really what we're doing, right? We're harmonizing, bringing everything into ourselves so that we can actually get along with it.
Absolutely. So what we do there, so this is an exercise I perform several times a week, if not every day, on myself. I typically for the last couple of months, I've been ending each yoga class I teach with some sort of version of that right there, what I just did. But so we're energy beings, right? Which means we have a frequency, we have a vibration. And what you're doing is you're harmonizing and you're bringing together all of those frequencies to create one frequency or one vibration. If you want to tap into that vibration, close your eyes and hum. Mm-hmm. That the vibration that you create in your hum is your vibration, right? That is your frequency. That's another really good way of connecting physically with your energy being, with yourself.
Yes, it's your primordial sound, the sound that the entire universe made at the moment of your birth. Yep. That's exactly what that is. That's your primordial frequency. Where was I going to go? I can't remember. Anyway, not sure where I was going to go with that.
Well, maybe that's where we end today.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to end. Moving from the doing person to the being person is all about you becoming self-actualized and becoming your natural self. And we gave you several tools and tips today for how to actually make that happen. So thanks, Jason, for being along today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Don't forget, you got to take ownership. We gotta take ownership ourselves. Can't let someone else keep doing it for us. That's extremely important.
There's no self-actualization if somebody else is doing the actualization. There's no savior here. No one's coming.
I think one message that had kept popping up in my head before we end. That doesn't mean you can't go see someone. You can't have a mentor. You can't have someone to help you, assist you in that. That's not what we're saying. I mean, there's still space for that, but you always will have to leave with homework, right? There will always be a level of homework that when you're done with that person, that now you have work to do on your own. You can't just rely on just that one person to lead you. That's what's gotten us here, is we're allowing other people to lead us, right? We can't do that. We have to lead ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we have mentors, right? Like we both have
absolutely
people in our lives who are constantly helping us. And that's not the point of self-actualization. The point of self-actualization is that you become responsible for who you are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Catch us next week on The Blueprint.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us today. To find out more about Angela, visit her website at www.angelablaha.com.